Tonight, we are going to talk about the American dream and young entrepreneurs that are pursuing it. Brewing beer. America? Yeah. Welcome to Kibbe on Liberty. By now, you know about my favorite metaphor. Craft beer as a delicious symbol for everything that is good and right about the free market system. Where individuals are free to experiment and take risks, free to create something new and beautiful, beer styles flourish. Where the government gets too big and too involved, or even owns or controls the means of beer production, you get one of two things. Either watery, skunky something that tastes, well, piss poor, or, as in Venezuela today, you get nothing at all. Put in the broader context, beer demonstrates the general principle of liberty. When you leave people alone, good things happen and people flourish. Wow! But it's not just a metaphor. The craft beer industry actually is a place of great opportunity for young entrepreneurs, regardless of ideology. As I've traveled around the world talking to brewers, I've been amazed at how many of them left boring, unsatisfying jobs to pursue their dreams and who are now making a good living doing what they love. And it's not just about making a living, but providing a service to a thirsty populace, many of whom regard that first drink at the end of the day as an important step to their personal pursuit of happiness. If that's not a noble enterprise, I don't know what is. As it happens, I have a personal connection to this story beyond my obsession with hops. My nephew, John Ream, has recently started his own brewery. With his wife, he created Trek Brewing in Newark, Ohio. It's the fulfillment of a lifelong ambition and a way to take control over his own career. John is just one of countless young people using craft beer, not just as some fancy economic talking point, but as a way of life that is actually making the country and the world a better place to live. Okay, we're going to start this episode, you guessed it, by drinking a beer. And this is not just any beer. This is a Dogma Hoptapod IPA. If you're a loyal viewer of Kibbe on Liberty, you know that Hoptapod is the beer made by my brewing friend in Serbia, Vladimir. And of course, it was inspired not by Serbian IPAs, not by the beers that he calls medieval beers, i.e. European beers, beers that suffered under the Reinheitsgebot in Germany and beers that were designed like hundreds of years ago. This is an American style IPA made with Galaxy hops, one of my favorite style of hops. In Vladimir's case, he somehow managed to score a supplier in Yakima, Washington. Think about that for a second. Vladimir from Serbia gets hops from Yakima, Washington, some of which come by way of Australia. That's a nice metaphor for free trade, and if you've watched that show, you know what I'm talking about. But this beer has broken so many international laws, so many national laws, probably state and local laws. I may be violating some EU directive, but I don't care. I smuggled it back from Serbia because this is the beer that started it all. So in the nose, you get almost a sort of a dry champagne thing. You get the fruity and citrusy hops that come from Galaxy. And what struck me the first time I had this beer was that it was something very American. You don't get beers like this traditionally in Europe. But now those ideas have crossed the pond, so to speak, and Vladimir is making what I consider to be a very hoppy, delicious, dry style of an American pale ale. He calls it an IPA, but you know, some of the extreme stuff I drink. It survived the trip just fine. So now that we have a delicious beverage to go through this, I had a chance at that same Flying Dog event where they talked about Flying Dogma with the brewer from Dogma Brewing. Got that? My nephew, John, came down from Newark, Ohio. He probably works like 16 hours a day trying to launch his new brewery, but he had a chance to hang out with Vladimir and Jim Caruso, the CEO of Flying Dog, to learn a few tricks from guys that have already made it in that space. I sat down with him in the bar to try to figure out what motivates him. As it turns out, the very same values that motivate you and me. Check it out. So we're here at Flying Dog Brewery. I'm with my nephew, John Ream, who is a brand new craft brewer. You left a dream job in Seattle. You were a well-paid engineer, and you moved back to Newark, Ohio to launch Trek Brewing. What are you thinking? Why would you do that? And does your wife still talk to you?
Yeah, you know, it was...
And I'll call her later to see whether or not this is true.
All right, that changes my answer. No, it was, you know, something that we always talked about doing as I was homebrewing and diving into it full bore. And, you know, we always talked about it someday. And, you know, that 30th birthday midlife crisis comes around, and we can keep talking, or we can put words into action. And she bought me my first homebrew kit and ingredients, not knowing where it would lead us.
But, a decision she deeply regrets today.
Some days, I'm sure, but I think overall we're immensely happy with it.
So you guys are struggling to start a small business, and you know you've bought a property and you've refurbished it, and you finally have all of your tanks working. It's a lot of work to run a business. It's not quite as glamorous as maybe you were thinking.
I knew it would be tough. We've had a history of entrepreneurship in the family, so I'd seen the long hours, but seeing it and experiencing it are still completely different beasts. Yeah, it's a ton of work from the first moment you get up till late at night when you finally hit the pillow again. But you know, I tell people most days I'm thrilled that we're doing it. I feel like that's about as good as you can ask for with any small business. So.
But it must be cool to do all that and put all that together and finally fill your glass with that beer. And it first of all, it turns out right. And then you discover that your friends and your customers and your community, they all show up and they like it too. That feels pretty good, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Handing somebody a pint across the bar, especially, you know, folks that come in our area, we have a lot of you know, domestic drinkers still, and they come in, they've drank this beer for 30 years, and we hand them a cream ale, and their face lights up, but hey, I actually like this, and it's not this other beer that I've had.
You've liberated them.
I have.
From that corporate swill. I mean, do we want to name names? Should we call out some of the crappiest beer in America today?
I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it.
Okay, we'll block that part out. So, is this about making a buck? Are you guys going to get rich doing this, or is it about that feeling of creating something and serving the community?
It's both, and partly because to serve the community, you have to make a buck, or you won't exist to serve the community. But you know, we support local nonprofits in our own community, and to do that, you know, you have to turn a profit so you can give back and continue benefiting and lifting everybody up around you.
So what was the first beer that sort of changed your mind? Because I assume we're all guilty of drinking Budweisers back in the day, but what was the first real beer you ever had?
The first beer that really changed my mind is continuing to be my mainstay. It's probably Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. It's something, you know, just perfect in a beer that you can drink all day, and anywhere you go, it's going to be there for you. You know, if you're in some bar that's the only craft option, you know, it's got your back.
So, well, someday we're here at Flying Dog, and it's the 37th largest craft brewer 37th largest brewer in the country, and yet they make this broad diversity of craft beers. Will Trek Brewing be crushing them someday in the brutal competition for shelf space?
You know, I think our main focus has been local, and I think it'll continue to be that. But you never know. You know, you never know where the beer will take you.
So we've seen this collaboration between Flying Dog and Dogma Brewing in Belgrade. Do you see yourself going to bizarre places and creating weirdo collaborations, or is that just something that your Uncle Matt does?
Yeah, hopefully we've done some local collaborations already, and stepping further out would be amazing.
There's the one thing I'm sort of fascinated by. Everyone thinks that business is sort of dog eat dog, cutthroat competition, but in the craft brewing industry, there's this collaboration where you'll come together with the guy that should be competing with you, but together you guys kind of grow your market and expose new people. Do you sense that is unique to craft brewing? Why does that happen?
I think there's still this big dog versus little dog environment in beer, because even though there are so many craft breweries, they still are only about 10% of the total market. So
you have a common enemy.
Yeah, and I think that's unifying among everybody.
Final question, and it's a tough one. What is your favorite beer?
I think Hoppy Brown that we do. It's got excellent big hop character, but it still supports it with a nice malty backbone with a little toast and biscuit.
And that's kind of a disruptive style, because I'm old enough to remember when brown ales and hoppy ales were separate things and you couldn't possibly mix them.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
I think it tastes delicious, so let's go for it.
So I've said this again and again, and I think it's important for conservatives and libertarians and constitutional people that believe in limited government to stop talking about ideology so much, to stop talking about the spreadsheets and numbers. Let's tell stories about why freedom is awesome. I think beer is one of those metaphors, but you have one in your life. I want you to go out there and tell a friend, maybe it's someone flirting with democratic socialism, explain to them why beer is freedom, and see if you can't make a connection even in these hostile times of partisan us versus them. Remember, if you want to free the people, you gotta fight the power.